Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV, and welcome to this. The first in is probably going to be a series of videos. I predict I'll probably do about three, and one of them, the middle one, will be a live stream. And this is about, of course, once again, I keep coming back to it, Three Eye Atlas. Yes. Now, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about, I don't want to, like I say, I don't want to tread over old ground. So I've put a link in the description box, as per Hapanwo TV tradition, to the portal I've created called the Interstellar Object Portal. I'll just show it to you, so you can go and just show you what it looks like. Here we go. There you go. That's the Interstellar Object Portal. All right, so you can go and find that. Everything's on there. There'll be a link in the description box to that. Basically, I'm recording this on the evening of the 30th of September. So the month ends tonight of September, and then a new month, October, begins tomorrow. And well, what's special about October? Well, it's my birthday on the 13th, so I don't know if I've got nothing planned for that. But no big parties or anything, but I'm going to have a birthday, obviously, like I do every year. No, but what's more important than that is that Mars Day is approaching. Mars Day is coming. Now, this is what I mean by Mars Day is what I've talked about on previous videos, which is that Three Eye Atlas is going to make its closest point of approach to Mars. And this is the day when hopefully we will learn a lot more about it, because we're in a position using the probes that are orbiting Mars right now to observe it in a way we wouldn't do otherwise. We'd never get a good view of it otherwise. In fact, the 3i is getting increasingly difficult to view from the Earth. The observatories on the Earth now are losing sight of it. And in fact, because it's approaching the solar conjunction, in fact, really just as soon as the Mars conjunction is over, pretty much, the solar conjunction begins within just a couple of days. And already many observatories are just giving up on it, because it's literally, 3i Atlas at the moment is literally just visible for maybe 2 or 3 minutes just before dawn in certain parts of the world, only in certain parts of the world, like Southern Australia, South America, South Africa, etc. Apart from that, it's just invisible, and so it's not enough time to get the data they need on it. So 3i Atlas essentially is becoming invisible from the Earth's surface, and it almost is now, because of the solar conjunction. And as I said earlier, you know, we on Earth, it's really annoying. We are bloody unlucky. Oh, it's sad and it's unfortunate. But, you know, if only 3i Atlas had come through 6 months earlier or 6 months later, we'd have a ringside seat. It would just literally be going right past us. We'd be in the position where Mars is now. But no, it had to come at just the right time, so that Earth is in the worst possible place for seeing it. And what's absolutely ironic is all the other planets are going to get the ringside seat. Mars is getting a ringside seat. Then Venus will be very close. I think it's 0.47 astronomical units. And 0.74 astronomical units, and then in March, assuming 3i stays on its current projected trajectory, Jupiter in March will get a very good view of it. It's incredibly this is incredibly serendipitous kind of trajectory, which puts Earth in it's incredibly bad luck. We are in a position where it's the worst possible outcome for us in terms of observation. Bad luck. Or is it bad luck? Maybe it's deliberate. And I discussed that in previous videos, definitely. So really, the schedule for observing 3i Atlas is now the Mars conjunction. It's basically the Mars conjunction, which is happening literally this Friday. And then it's happening literally this Friday. The actual time, the literal time when it's its closest point of approach to the Mars, it's actually the CPA to Mars is actually, I say CPA, it's actually not really a conjunction, because in terms of the Earth, the sky of the Earth on the celestial sphere, 3i Atlas is not completely in the plane of the ecliptic, which means in terms of observations on Earth, it's 7.3 degrees away from Mars. So it's not a major conjunction with Mars as far as by the definition of that word, which is where two objects appear together on the celestial sphere. And it doesn't really make any difference anyway, because As I've said earlier, as I just said, terrestrial telescopes can hardly see it now, and in a couple of days they won't be able to see it at all. And as far as the space telescopes go, JWST in particular is not able to see it because JWST cannot actually train its lens more than 85 degrees away from the sun, because JWST is an infrared telescope. It has a very, very sensitive lens and sensitive phosphor, and in fact, if they're very, very careful, because if you point JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope, anywhere near the sun, it'll be damaged. It'll be damaged very badly, and where it is at the Lagrange 1 point, you can't just send up a rocket with astronauts to repair it. Hubble also will not be able to view 3i Atlas at the moment. Hubble is a bit easier to fix because it's in low Earth orbit, but you won't be able to. It won't be seen. It won't be able to look at it because it's too close to the sun. Once 3i Atlas goes into solar conjunction, there's a gap of over a month before we can see it again. I'll go into that at the end. But anyway, that's the situation we're in right now. And the actual time, the literal time, they've timed it to the nearest hour, is 4 a.m. UTC on Friday. That's 4 a.m. It's 5 a.m. British Summer Time. Is when there's the moment when it hits the closest point of approach to Mars. Just what is it? Let me just find the chart again. The exact distance is, bear with me. I normally get these things ready. The exact distance is 0.1937 astronomical units. That is roughly 18 million miles. Now, that sounds like a long way, but in cosmic terms, that is scraping the paint off. It's a very close pass indeed. Very close indeed. Okay, so you may wonder what this is behind me. This sine wave appears everywhere, all over 3i Atlas publications. So I'll just show it to you in more detail. There you go. This appears everywhere in various contexts, and in this case, it's to do with it measures the distance and where it comes from the sun, perihelion, as you see, escape Lyra. It's going to head towards the constellation of Lyra. Or will it? That's the question. Will it? That is the question, isn't it? But anyway, let's just see exactly where it is right now. I've got a good. Here we go. This is it. Or do I have to refresh it? Yeah, I'll refresh it. Doesn't make much difference because I actually looked at this earlier today. Well, it helps if you can see it. Oh, you can see it. Good. Oh, go out of the way. Go out of the way. Here we go. There it is. As you can see, slightly above the plane of the ecliptic, if you look at it like that. This is why from the Earth's position, there's the Earth, it's a 7.3 degree separation on the celestial sphere. So it's going to pass close to Mars, but above Mars. If you imagine the celestial sphere as a floor with an up and down, it's going to be slightly above. But as you see, we are 30th September 1644. And there is 3i Atlas, very, very close to Mars. It's literally going to go, as you can see, I'll just forward the clock a little bit. There we are. 1st of October, 2nd of October, 3rd of October. And I'll just get the time just right. And it moves slightly back. Here we are. 5 a.m. It's roughly that. So we just go back in minutes. It's roughly, is that UTC or I think that might be UTC. So we'll go back one more hour. It doesn't have to be exact. And there we are. That is the CPA. That's the closest point of approach to Mars. 3rd of October, 4:06 Universal Time. I think that is. And British summertime UTC doesn't make any difference. You can see from this chart how close it's going to get. It's going to get incredibly close. What if I can get anything? Zoom in a little bit. There we go. There's all 3i and there's Mars. And you can see how close it is to the red planet. Now, as you see, if you look at the key to this particular chart, this is the symbol for a comet. And indeed, although 3i Atlas, I explained this in the previous video, although 3i Atlas has comet-like features, there's many reasons to suspect this is not a comet, that it's not a comet at all. So I think the next step is let's go and see what Avi Loeb has been saying since the last video I did. And as always, please, I always recommend follow this blog, follow Avi Loeb's blog. You don't have to read his scientific papers because they are very, very nebulous to people who are not trained scientifically. But he writes on his blog in a way that normal people follow. And as you see, I'm following on Medium. So you see, there we go. And I'll go through some of these articles as we progress. So it began after the last, just very, very shortly after the last video I did, we have this, a steeply rising production of cyanide and nickel without iron in the gas plume around 3I Atlas. Now, I'm not sure it's worth reading all this, but it does say here, nickel without iron is a signature of an industrial production from nickel alloys. This data constitutes a new anomaly of 3I Atlas. Natural comets generically show nickel and iron simultaneously as both elements are produced together in the ejecta of the supernova explosions. And that's true. You may have even heard the phrase, if you have a passing interest in astronomy, you may even have heard the phrase nickel-iron asteroid or nickel-iron meteorite. Nickel and iron are produced together. They're usually found together, either in a mixture or in compound. And there's no way there's always, the skeptics always come up with massively wide-eyed speculations, but there's no natural process by way they can actually separate the two metals. It says, is this anomaly another clue of a possible technological origin of 3I Atlas? The paper suggests chemical formation through nickel carbonyl channel, which is an extremely rare and exotic possibility in comets, whereas it is a standard technology for industrial nickel refining. So basically what they're saying is they're clutching at some massively unlikely straw, that is the Skeppers, to suggest there's a natural process by which the nickel and iron could be separated in this comet. And to be fair, we're dealing with something, if it is a natural object, I doubt that, but it is a possibility, then we're dealing with something incredibly old, older than the solar system, and may have formed in a very, very different way to heavenly bodies that we're familiar with. So that is a possibility. But if so, there's no known process that this could happen. And there's other reasons for suspecting this might be technology. But it talks about the mass loss rate for nickel. The spectroscopic data of the plume surrounding 3I Atlas also reveals cyanide. Right. And there he goes through some of the old material that he's gone through before about the cometary tail. And then, of course, the fact that 3I Atlas is glowing, it says, if on the other hand, most of the sunlight is reflected from the surface of the nucleus, then 3I Atlas is a million times more massive than the previous interstellar object, 2I Borisov. Now, 2I Borisov was a comet of the type we're familiar with. 2I Borisov is a natural object. It scores 0 on the Loeb scale because it is very obviously a natural comet. In fact, 2I Borisov, it's about as boring as interstellar objects get. Yet if you compare it, it's very interesting comparing 3I with Borisov. And again, he talks here about the statistics of how many large objects you should find, together with the incredible trajectory. Now, I should point out here, this is an assumption, the 46-kilometer diameter. We don't know how big it is. We should know because of the resolution of one of the Mars probes, which I'll talk about it later. But we don't know exactly how big it is. It's a speculation or guess based on the brightness. And Avi is also guessing this, but he's guessing a large nucleus, whereas other scientists are guessing from the coma, because the coma is too thin to reflect that much light from the sun, indicating that there's only two possibilities. Either 3I has a massive, massive nucleus, 46 plus kilometers in diameter, or it's generating its own light. And Avi talked about that. And based on the composition of the coma and the size of the coma and its density, he speculates it's actually glowing. Hence the video I made, which you could find from the background link portal, 3I Atlas is glowing. There's no natural process other than like nuclear fusion in a star by which an object can glow. Everything else in the universe, like planets, moons, rings of Saturn, etc., is reflecting that light. And he actually went to Copenhagen here, and this is before the drones. So he managed to fly across to Copenhagen, and he visited. He sat in this room, and he says, "This is the participants of the Copenhagen Conference of 1930, photographed in Auditorium A at the Niels Bohr Institute. 4 of them received a Nobel Prize in Physics. Bohr was awarded this in 1922, while 5 were awarded the Max Planck Medal." And he talks about that, and he actually ends up sitting. He says here Avi went to sit in this room. He did a lecture which is recorded, that's very highbrow, very scientific. I wouldn't recommend that unless you know a lot about this. But he ended up sitting. He says, I chose a seat on the center of the wooden bench. I was informed that I just sat where Wolfgang Pauli sat 95 years ago. Ooh, that's this guy in the middle here, Wolfgang Pauli. Oh, it's one of these guys in the middle. I'm not sure which. But Wolfgang Pauli is a very famous physicist. But all I could think about that moment is how uncomfortable the seating bench is, and how much worse the quality of life must have been for these luminaries a century ago. Nevertheless, I would happily traded being in the same room 95 years ago, when the excitement of discovery was routine. You see, this is what I like about Avi. He's not lost this sense of fun in science. He's not lost this sense of fun. And then he talks about the high-rise camera, which I'll come on to later. And David Gross suggests we should observe 3I with a radio telescope. Yeah. Then Avi says something here which I think we should be worried, we should be concerned about. On one hand, I would be pleased if 3I turns out to be a CO2-rich comet, implying that humanity is not at risk from alien technology. But on the other hand, humanity desperately needs a wake-up call to avoid self-destruction. Well, that's the assumption that if 3I turns out to be if 3I turns out to be technology, it's from something hostile. And then Missing Trillions made a great comment about, I think it was on Alt Tech, about the possibilities of what 3I could be. Either it's a natural object, if so, it's a very strange one. Is it an artificial object? If so, is it friendly, or is it friendly? Is it hostile? Is it going to invade us and drop bombs on us, or is it just observing us? I think the latter's the last possibility is the most likely from what we know of other alien behavior. Because of course, this is why if people are scared of 3I Atlas, don't bother, man. If you can sleep easy in your bed, knowing that we're already being visited by interstellar objects and beings everywhere, all the time, everywhere, and have been for thousands of years, what difference does one more make? But then then Missing Trillions adds something else. He says another possibility: it is either natural or artificial, or it could be a man-made artificial object, part of the secret space program. Those 3 possibilities. And in all 3 cases, it may be used by the Illuminati to instigate Project Bluebeam, the fake alien invasion, the last card, what Carol Rosin says. Yes, that's a possibility. And no doubt we'll come back to that, because I'm going to do a live stream and we can talk about that perhaps. I hope Missing Trillions will appear there. And so that's that article there. Then he said this: the detection of an anti-solar tail for the 3I Atlas. This was on the 30th of last month. And yeah, but believe it or not, even though there is this big anti-tail here, anti-solar tail means a more conventional tail away from the comet or object, what it is. Now, this of course will be used by the skeptics to say, well, there you are, it's just a comet, it's got a tail like any other comet. The problem is this tail is very diminutive, a weak tail with a teardrop shape in the anti-sun direction. Yeah, it's got that, and it's a very small diminutive tail. On a factor of 10, it's much smmaller than the anti-tail. So the anti-tail towards the sun is far bigger, and it's much wider, as we're going to find out, than the tail, the conventional tail. Now that again is something completely new and unprecedented. I mean, there has been a huge amount of what you remember. Do you remember when I talked about the near-death experience with Anthony Peake's book? I talked about promissory materialism. This is the idea that skeptics use when people like Susan Blackmore have said this, that yes, we don't know exactly how the human brain causes these experiences now, but we will do in the future when we learn more about it. That's called promissory materialism. So even if like the dualist kind of God afterlife survival hypothesis is still valid now, it won't be in a few years when we learn more about the brain and we learn about how it works and how it produces these experiences. Right? That's the skeptic promissory materialism. And as I said in my review of Anthony Peake, you can never disprove that promissory materialism because you can't disprove a negative. I can't prove tomorrow that some skepper will explain the entire NDE. I can't. But then, see, then the skepper can always say, "Well, it's coming. I promise, it's coming next week, next year. I promise you that there's a project going on in Oxford right now about it. There's a project Harvard are working on this and that and the other. Just you wait, just you wait." You survivalist believers will be rubbing your nose in oblivion this time next year, we promise you. But they've been saying that now for how long? Ever since NDE started seriously being studied in the early 70s by Raymond Moody. And, well, they always said it's just next year we'll know more and then we'll explain away all this. It hasn't happened yet. Now, we have something very, very similar with 3i Atlas. It's promissory normality. I call it promissory normality. And this is the idea that the 3i Atlas believers in the comet believers, the people who say it's just a natural object, will say when 3i was first detected and Avi started talking about the statistical and circumstantial reasons he thought it might be technology, all the skeppers were saying to Avi, and Karen Meach, who's like, she swore at him. She's horrible. She was actually rude to him. She swore at him on a Zoom call. They said things like, and I'm sure Professor Brian Cox jumped on this bandwagon like he always does. He has to, doesn't he? Avi, don't be silly, Davy. Don't be a knobber. It's just coincidence. And you know what? When we turn the JWST and Hubble Space Telescope on 3i Atlas, I promise you, it'll look more and more. It'll look normal. It'll look just like a normal comet. Well, this is what they were saying. Basically, the promissory normality was that when we learn more about 3i Atlas by using these space telescopes, the Sphere X, the Hubble, and JWST, when we actually examine it with these telescopes, then we promise, then in the future, we will, tomorrow when this data comes in, you'll see it'll look more and more normal. It'll look more and more like a normal comet. Well, guess what? The opposite has happened. The closer we look at 3i, the stranger it appears. I mean, I've given you previous examples on previous videos, and here we have now. We have now we have now this idea of there's the tail, the huge anti-tail, and there's the tiny little minuscule normal tail. And as Avi says here at the end, he says, as 3i Atlas will approach perihelion on October the 29th, its surface will get warmer and its enhanced outgassing will encounter stronger radiation and wind pressures from the sun. He compares this to interrogation tactics. Interrogation, the more stress you put on someone if you're being grilled by the police, the more likely you are to elicit a confession. 3i Atlas might reveal its nature and origin then in the coming months. The problem with that is, you see, the problem with that is that, when you look at the trajectory of 3i, you'll see that the perihelion moment is actually it's only just over 3.5 weeks after the Mars conjunction or Mars approach. So 3i is not far off perihelion right now, and it's only going to get slightly closer to the sun now. All in all, this is not a sun grazing comet like so many others, like Elenin was. Elenin actually traveled within the orbit of Mercury when it was close to the sun. 3i Atlas is not going to get more than about, in terms of its distance from the sun, its closest point of approach to the sun, its perihelion. It's roughly, I think it's 1.8. It's 1.8 AU, which is about, in terms of, if you look at the orbits on the diagram of the solar system, it's about 3/4 of the way between Earth and Mars. That's as close as it's going to get to the sun. Then it will start moving away if it stays on trajectory. But it doesn't really matter in a way because we're not going to see it. We won't see anything of 3i Atlas. I mean, no doubt they may be able to use the Mars probes to get a bit more data on 3i as it moves away. But I mean, these Mars probes won't be able to observe it like, for example, a space telescope would. So it's going to be pretty much invisible for the next month after this. Okay, then he wrote this on the 6th of September. What is the size of 3I Atlas's nucleus? Now, this is a picture of an oil rig burning, I think. And he says here, the biggest unresolved question about the interstellar object is the size of its nucleus. Well, there's more to come for that. And he talks about he recorded a discussion with Anna Paulina Luna and Peter Skafish. Right, Anna Paulina Luna, of course, chaired the UAP meeting. And available here, and a podcast with Michael Keating and Michael Shermer, Brian Keating and Michael Shermer. That's very interesting, that one, yeah. As one would hope to get clues about the nature of 3I Atlas from the plume of gas around it, data from the Webb Space Telescope and the others show this plume stretches out on a vast scale, at least 350,000 kilometers. Right, that's not enough, unfortunately, to put Mars within the coma, but it's still. Hopefully, the Mars probes will pick up some non-visual data in terms of the chemistry as well. So he gives the very, very strange chemicals coming out of this particular object, which is totally different from what we get from other comets. Most comets give off water and various other things, and mostly water with a few gases mixed in. There's much in this case. There is very little water, a lot of carbon dioxide, 87% carbon dioxide, traces of cyanide, nickel without iron, as we've heard. This is unprecedented. This is what I mean. The promissory normality is not; it's promissory weirdness, which I hope will continue. And he carries on a bit more about how big. We still don't know exactly how big this is, but again, we can make judgments based on what we know, and what we know is we know how bright it is. We know knowing how bright it is, and knowing how much of the light is reflected is coming from the nucleus rather than the coma. And as I said, if all that light is being reflected from the nucleus, or 90% of it is being reflected from the nucleus, then the object itself must be 46 kilometers in diameter, which is gigantic. In my view, according as Avi said, it may well be smaller than that. And we'll find out hopefully on Friday. It may well be smaller than 46 kilometers, but in which case there's only one possibility, and that is it's generating its own light. And then here we are. This is 3I Atlas. This is on the 9th of September. 3I Atlas is turning green. It's changed color. Until recently, all spectrographic studies of 3I Atlas indicated a reddish color. Can you see that? Yeah, you can. Okay. But the latest image of 3I Atlas, reported by Michael Jager and Gerald Riemann, suggests the glow around it has turned green. Transition from red to green-blue colors might be associated in a steeper rise in the production of cyanide. As we've just seen about that, we've already had that detected by the Very Large Telescope. And the Atlas Telescope team released data. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze in a minute. And it said that another strange thing, it's a cross-section of scattered light around 3I Atlas grew inversely with heliocentric distance to the power of 3.9 when the object was farther than 3.3 times in terms of the Earth-Sun separation. Once 3I Atlas got closer, the growth was moderated in a power law index of 2.1. I don't know what all this means necessarily, but I know that it became active much earlier than a comet should, when it's supposedly inside what's known as the ice line, or outside the ice line, and too early for these various volatiles to become sublime or to evaporate. Now, Avi hasn't mentioned this, but 3I Atlas has got brighter, very, very suddenly brighter. I'll mention this in a minute when we've done this article. And he then talks about this congressional hearing coming up, which I've covered elsewhere. Now, 3I Atlas is getting brighter. Now, have a look at this. Have a look at this, guys. This is something I'm surprised Avi doesn't mention this. But he didn't write a special article about this. People were even asking him about it. Yes, 3I Atlas, this is AI overview. 3I Atlas is getting brighter, but unexpectedly so. Yeah, let's look at the graph here. Let's look at the brightness graph. Where's the brightness graph? And there's a really good graph that shows how quickly it gets brighter. It's here somewhere. It's not that one. Here we are. This is the best one here. Interstellar comet tail, 3i Atlas brightness, tail, and trajectory. Right. Here are the brightness readings from 3i Atlas, from the Coma, and that is Coma JPS model. That is basically the projection. So it's slightly, we know it's bright. It's brighter. There's the apparent visual magnitude and the date. So this is time on the x-axis, brightness on the y-axis. Now, as you can see here, it starts off at magnitude 18 and brightens as it gets closer. And it brightens proportionally to what we would expect at first. Because as you can see, the projected model, although lower, because as we know, 3i Atlas is much brighter. 3i Atlas is much brighter than expected. We know that the 3i is, it's still, despite the fact that 3i is brighter, until this moment here, which is basically the 25th of September, it still followed the pattern we would expect with the brightness proportion. It rises from magnitude 18, and here it's magnitude 16, so it's getting slightly brighter. You could pick that up with a backyard telescope at that point, and indeed some astronomers have done it. Unfortunately, at this point, it's getting to the point where it can't be seen from the Earth anyway. But that's the Mars closest approach date there, which is the 3rd of October. But then you see what happens here. It's just happened a few days ago. Look at the brightness. These crosses are the brightness actual measurements from various sources. And then the red line is the aggregate of them. But look what happens. Look at it shooting up. The last measurement on this graph is magnitude 13, let's say 13.7, 13.8. It's brightening massively and very suddenly. Within just a few days, it brightens up massively. You know what's going on there? And then Avi published this article here explaining I'll just shut that down there. Explaining the anomalous anti-tail of 3i Atlas. As you can see here, I think this article is very similar to what he wrote before, where he talks about the reason anti-tails appear is to do with sublimating ice grains on a particular side of the object, if the object's not rotating. He also mentions somewhat electrical charge as well, which can cause anti-tails. So maybe you can pause and read that, because I think in this one he kind of, I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm not going to dwell too much. And then he recaps the thing about the colors and the metals and things like that. And then we go here. Then there's this one here. Extreme negative polarization. A new study of 3i Atlas. This was on, the date here is now, we're coming forward to the 10th of this month. The interstellar object is uniquely distinct in its polarization properties from solar system bodies, as well as from 2i Borisov. That light is a wave consisting of coupled oscillating electric and magnetic fields, which are orthogonal to each other in a plume that is perpendicular to the direction of propagation of the wave in a vacuum. I don't know what that means, but we'll carry on. The polarization of the wave corresponds to different modes of field oscillations. For linear polarization, electric and magnetic fields oscillate along a single direction, whereas for circular polarization, fields rotate at a constant rate at their plane the wave travels. Okay. And it says here, 3i Atlas is characterized by extremely deep and narrow negative polarization, where polarization changes sign. The combination of low inversion angle and extreme negative polarization is unprecedented among comets and asteroids. 3i Atlas, the first object known with such polarimetric behavior. And then he travels on these other things here. Retrograde trajectory, estimated diameter, heliocentric distance, the plume of gas, etc. So I'm afraid I don't understand exactly what that means, but he's made it as comprehensive as possible for we mere mortals. But you can see basically 3i is different to all other objects we know of. Right, the sun would, now I've always said this, the sun would glow in the Hubble image is 10 times longer than it is wide. This is this is odd. It says here, new analysis, which he wrote with Eric Keto. He's written with Eric Keto before. The glow of scattered sunlight appears twice as long for the object towards the sun than it is in directions perpendicular or opposite to the sun. As I explained earlier, it has a very, very short normal tail away from the sun. Very short, very diminutive and atrophied normal tail. Perpendicular opposite, where the extent of the glow appears to be the same. The extent of the glow, does that mean there's something uniform about it where it shouldn't be? The sunward extension of the glow around 3I Atlas is opposite in direction to the tail of scattered sunlight that is commonly observed for comets. The physics behind the cometary tails is simple. Dust particles with a size comparable to the characteristic wavelength of sunlight. And again, he says it's to do with the size of the particles and whether they interact with the solar wind, as I've explained previously. Why does the comets display tails of reflected sunlight that point away from the sun? Why does 3I exhibit an anti-tail? An even more remarkable fact about the anti-tail of 3I Atlas is that it is noticeable as a factor of 2 in a very unfavorable projection. The line of sight connecting 3I Atlas to Earth was misaligned with the line connecting 3I to the sun by only 10 degrees on the 21st of July. When the Hubble image was taken. This means we're seeing the extension of the glow nearly edge on, smaller by a geomagnetic factor of the sign of 10 degrees. So it was misaligned. Was that an accident? Is that a normal thing for astronomers to do? The geometric correction factor for this projection is, and he gives the details here, this implies that if we were to board a spacecraft and hover vertically to the sunward direction above the elongated glow of scattered sunlight around 3I, we would see it extending 10 times farther towards the sun than its width or tail. This is a remarkable elongation that was not discussed in the scientific literature prior to our new paper. We explained the scattered sunlight around 3I Atlas as a result of ice fragments and not the commonly assumed refractory dust. These ice fragments are evaporated by sunlight, but since most of them are launched from the sun-facing side of 3I, the largest among these survive a distance that's 10 times longer to the sun than sideways or backwards. So as a result, it's much less ice than you'd normally get from a comet. There might be other explanations for this tenfold extension of the glow around 3I. One thing is clear. Its existence is unprecedented. During an interview titled Question Everything, which was featured on CBS News, I explained that 3I deserves special attention, and it gives the anomalies here. I've not actually, I did see that. I did see that one actually. And it says, is a Bible quote here, Ecclesiastes 1-9. What has been in vain, what has been will be again, what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. We should, but it's conceivable. Ecclesiastes was wrong. We should question everything. Yeah. Right. Now, is the nucleus of 3I Atlas 15 kilometers in diameter? And this was published on the 14th of September. Checking I want to keep checking you can still see everything. Newly released data identifies the interstellar object 3I Atlas was, and it gives here the distance from the sun. The Zwicky transient facility data shows a steady brightening of 3I Atlas relative to a solid object of a fixed size. This brightening can be explained by the mass loss of 3I. When 3I was at heliocentric distance at 3.8 AU. Surprisingly, the Hubble glow was extended by a factor of 10 towards the sun. Now, we've already talked about that. However, between May the 15th and the beginning of June 2025, so this is going back, this is historical data. These are plates that were taken before 3I Atlas was even discovered. Someone just went back in time and they checked the historical record and found, yes, it had been collected as data, but no one noticed it. It suggests a plateau in its effective size as a function of time. Authors calibrate the growth in the effective size of 3I relative to a model which assigns the diameter of 5.6 kilometers to the nucleus of 3I based on the Hubble image. 5.6, though, is a guess. And when they say size, effective growth in effective size. This is not the object actually increasing in size directly. It just means that it's the how it was observed. This estimates from its observation. The size estimate is model dependent. Yeah. It makes a number of assumptions about the nature of 3i, its reflectability, etc. And there's more data to suggest that's not the case. The simplest interpretation of this early plateau is it represents the bare nucleus before substantial mass loss. In that case, the actual diameter of the nucleus is larger than the assumed value of 5.6 kilometers by the square root of the enhancement factor of 5 to 10. That's huge during the plateau period. That would mean the diameter is about 15 kilometers, 20 times larger than 2i Borisov, and a lot more bigger than Oumuamua. Well, there's been more on that since he wrote this. There's been more details, but I'm surprised he didn't actually discuss the brightening that I talked about. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This was just 5 days ago. I almost did a special video about this. I mean, I was so busy with something else. I mean, this broke about the same time as like the ID cards and stuff and the drones. So I was covering that. But I almost did a special video on this. And if I hadn't been so busy, and I was also doing the Panmo show on Thursday, so I didn't have time for that. News on 3i Atlas and lack of non-gravitational acceleration implies an anomalously massive object. Or, as I say in the comments section, an object that's smaller but has its own means of propulsion to keep it on a certain velocity. Now, it's interesting he says non-gravitational acceleration. What he actually means, he might mean, is he means not lack of non-gravitational acceleration, but actual non-anomalous acceleration. And these charts here talk about that here. Breaking news, the interstellar object 3i Atlas is anomalously massive and large. In a new paper I co-authored with Richard Clote and Peter Veres, we used data on the motion of 3i as compiled by the Minor Planet Center between May the 15th, September the 23rd to get an upper limit on the deviation of 3i from a trajectory sculpted by gravity. So, on object, it should be exhibiting some non-gravitational acceleration due to the pressure from its outgassing. It's like one of those fireworks that spins round, one of those Catherine wheel fireworks that spins round, driven by the rocket thrust of its own fireworks. So comets are similar. They move chaotically and due to the outgassing plumes functioning as little rockets. The net upper limit on residuals implies that the non-gravitational acceleration of 3i was smaller than 15 meters per day squared. The total mass loss rate and outflow speed from its surface were inferred from the Webb data. Given that a rocket effect is not noticeable, the plumes are not driving it particularly very much. The mass of 3i Atlas must be bigger than 33 billion tons. Consequently, the diameter of its solid density nucleus must be larger than 5 kilometers. This suggests 3i is far more massive than the other two interstellar objects. And he talks about our analysis compared the evolution of the sky position of 3i. The comparison to the expected sky positions provided a net upper limit of, and it gives the details there. A systematic trend is unlikely to be affected by a shift on the centroid of light owing to the development of a bright spot away from the nucleus of 3i Atlas. All right. I wonder what that is. The highest resolution showed an optically thin anti-tail in the direction of the sun, and an imaging by Gemini South showed a faint tail as well. Throughout the entire period, the brightest spot remains centered on the nucleus, so not from the coma. Again, where's that light coming from? Is it reflected or is it being generated by the nucleus? There's some more details there. Momentum conservation implies that 3i Atlas must be massive in order not to be pushed back by the flow of material from its warmed sun-facing side, so that the anti-tail would act as a brake, slowing it down. I assumed a high collimation of evaporated materials because the glow of scattered light in the Hubble Space Telescope image was twice longer towards the sun than it is wide. And he gives some details there. This jet-like structure suggests a high collimation, whatever collimation is. The product of low mass rate loss and the outflow speed divided by the upper limit on the non-gravitational acceleration sets a lower limit on the object's mass. And he gives some details here. It's at solid density. This implies a minimum diameter of 5 kilometers. This minimum diameter is close to the upper bound of range, etc. So it's it's far, far bigger. A large nucleus mass for 3I exacerbates the tension between the interstellar mass reservoir of rocky material ejected from exoplanetary systems. Again, we talked about that on the previous video. There's so, rogue planets and matter just floating around in space outside the solar system, away from the influence of any sun's gravitational field, which is what it is, any star's gravitational field. There's hardly any of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see the stars. If there was a huge amount of 3I Atlas-sized objects in interstellar space, the space would be black. We wouldn't see the stars because there'd be too much solid matter in space. So we're very lucky. I mean, this is amazing because, when Oumuamua went past and it disappeared, and everyone thought, oh no, it's accelerating anomalously. My God, that was a spaceship. That was our one chance to see an interstellar object that's artificial or confirm that it's artificial. And it's gone forever. We'll never get it back. This Project Lyra thing's going to take a century to catch up with it. It's no use. And then 2I Borisov came along, and as I said, that's about as boring as interstellar objects get. And everyone was thinking, oh dear, oh, woe is us. Woe is us. We had our one chance to see a truly and true anomaly in interstellar objects. And then we just got a comet. And all we're going to have now is a parade of normal comets like Borisov from now on until 6 or 7 human lifetimes has passed. Well, that lament has happily proven to be very premature, hasn't it? Because then along comes 3I Atlas that changes everything. This makes Oumuamua look normal. But I mean, of course, the skeptics will say it's just a coincidence. They'll say, yeah, there's hardly any debris or objects of that size out in space, 5 kilometers plus. But, sooner or later, they're going to come along, and we just happen to be lucky. It's like winning the lottery, If you win it, you can win a lottery. It doesn't mean that every punter's going to get the jackpot, does it? But you see, the thing is, like, imagine 2 3I Atlases came along. The skeptics say, well, blimey, we've got 2 at once. Isn't that an even more incredible coincidence? And the thing is, what if it's 3? Oh, an even bigger coincidence. The skeptics, as I've said before, I complain all the time in my skeptic videos. I complain all the time about this. As far as the skeptic is concerned, there is no upper limit on the calling coincidence. There is no statistical ceiling above which they'll stop saying everything's a bloody coincidence. There's no cutoff point where they'll just say, all right, this is too unlikely to be a coincidence. So it's just a get out of jail free card for skeptics who don't want to admit things. Anyway, let's carry on. So that's the minimum. So according to this, so basically 3I Atlas is rocketing along, possibly literally, and it's hardly deviating at all from its trajectory. It's too straight and too narrow and too fixed. The velocity is just too steady, and its course too straight to be a comet, or to be a comet that's the size of comets normally are. So Avi is being very cautious and saying, well, that's because it's just huge. It's just massive. So it can't be budged by its own outgassing. Its own outgassing is too weak to budge it. That's him being cautious. But let's be honest. I'm sure Avi will accept this, and he hasn't actually said it, but I'm sure he thinks it. The object could indeed be smaller than 5 kilometers in size, but it has its own propulsion system that's keeping it on course. And that the outgassing is, like I said, an artificial plume of nanobots collecting interstellar medium, or it might be to keep objects from impacting the craft. It could be all kinds of things like that. The Angry Astronaut has done some great videos about that. And I'm going to come back to Angry Astronaut in a minute, actually. So that's That's the interesting part there, isn't it? Yeah. And then what is there's this article here I can show you. What's the nature of Three-Eye Atlas? Now this is kind of a summary. He uses the analogy of noticing a new animal in your backyard with a tail coming out of its forehead instead of its rear end. He points out that cats do not have an anti-tail, but experts dismiss the anomaly and keep telling reporters that any street animal with a tail must be a cat. It's an analogy for a comet. And he goes on to have a bit of a go at the skeptosphere for their negative behavior, including a lot of rudeness and indeed accusations towards Avi, I might add. So this article is kind of a summary of what's happened so far. And with using the analogy of like cats, cat's strange. Let's just have a look at this bloody tosser. Hang on a sec. Andrew Johnson likes this guy, which means he must be a dickhead. Actually, he's not that. He's normally all right. Hang on, let's have a look here. Hang on. Anton Petrov. This is a scientist. This is a scientist who does YouTube videos, and a lot of his videos are quite interesting. Actually, he doesn't seem too bad normally, but then he made one about bloody Three-Eye Atlas, and it's really. I'll show you the comment I left. Where is it? Hang on. Did NASA just? Where is it? Here we go. Three-Eye Atlas is emitting nickel. Is this the video? But something doesn't add up. Because he's actually. Is this the one with my comment here? Yeah, right. Let's play the little bit that's interesting.
Object.
There we go. And we got another ad. Okay. I just click rewind, you get another ad. Okay.
Regards to the third interstellar comet detected in the solar system.
I'm claiming fair use on this, actually.
The comet referred to as Three-Eye Atlas. And we're actually...
Are you sure it's a comment, Anton? This guy, he's Ukrainian. That's why he's got this accent, just by the way, just let you know.
We're going to talk about something somewhat important, mostly because, once again, this comet has received a lot of buzz online. That's also, unfortunately...
Just buzz. No, these are scientific hypotheses.
It's getting a little bit too speculative and a little bit too bizarre.
You mean they're talking about aliens?
And so because of these new headlines, and also because of the recent email I received, I wanted to discuss the subject once again, focusing primarily on scientific facts and everything we know about the subject.
Yeah, and of course, Avi doesn't discuss scientific facts. He's just a loony. He's basically standing next to Win Keach on some hillside with a tinfoil hat on his head and Wellington boots. Is that what this guy's saying?
And so before we start the video, I wanted to briefly address a very important concern that has now been voiced by a lot of scientists out there. As a matter of fact, this is based on several emails I've received in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and this is basically...
And here we're talking about emails from actual scientists that are unfortunately somewhat upset. And so here...
Yeah, instead of like fake scientists like Avi Loeb. He tricked his way to Harvard. He became the Baird Professor of Astronomy and Astrophysics. With false papers. Yeah, that's right. He got someone in Israel to print them up for him off like a inkjet printer.
Researchers.
Look at his name, Colin Snodgrass. Colin Snodgrass. It's a good name for a skeptic, that is. Colin Snodgrass. Hope you can see this. Yeah, you can. Good.
Behind this recent study, especially Rohan Rahat-Gaonkar and the international...
I bet when he was a kid at school, the bullies picked on him for that mercilessly, which is why he became a skeptic, probably.
Team you see on this list expressed deep concern that their work is being misinterpreted and actually miscommunicated by invoking very unusual exotic explanations involving aliens, and specifically...
Oh, aliens! He mentioned the A word. Yeah, but you see, the skeptics will react emotionally like this, which will cloud their judgment.
Alien probes. And I guess here you're probably aware who's doing all of this and why this is creating so much controversy. The Israeli researcher working at Harvard, who has unfortunately been completely misinterpreting all of these results just to once again fit his own agenda.
Don't tell me, Anton. He's promoting evidence that has been comprehensively discredited. That's what you're going to say, isn't it?
Again, fit his own agenda, and so that he basically can sell more books.
Whoa!
And, as I promised in some of the previous videos,
he's promoting his own agenda so he can sell more books. Let's look at the... we don't need to look any more of this idiot. We don't need to look any more of this crap. As you see, I thumbed it down. But look at I put a comment here which says it all. This is me here, of course. So if people have the wrong opinions, they're just selling books, quote unquote. But if they have the right opinions, they're just what? Question mark. ellipsis. Karen Meach disagrees with him and has written a book, Comets 3. Is she just selling books? Just selling books, quote unquote. This is why so many people agree with Avi and keep their mouths shut. They don't want to be persecuted. Yeah, and I've said this before about many other situations. I've said this many times before. This is why Annie Jacobsen, when she wrote her book about Area 51, which I've mentioned on another video, she has come up with, I won't talk about it now, but she's come up with an explanation for the Roswell incident, which is one of the most chilling and horrific possibilities I've ever come across. It is absolutely stomach churning and horrifying what she says she's discovered about the Roswell incident. And I hope to God it's not true. But Annie Jacobsen, you know how she knows this? She got it from an anonymous source. Yes, just trust me, bro. She got it from an anonymous source from inside EG&G in the Area 51. And you know, the skeptics repeat her theory almost verbatim without any question at all, because you see, even though she got it from an anonymous source. Now, when Lou Elizondo and David Grush say, I've got an anonymous source, oh, that's not evidence. Your anonymous source could be anyone. You could have made them up. Annie Jacobsen says she's got an anonymous source. And, oh, how clever you are, Annie. You know why? Why does Annie Jacobsen get her anonymous source pass? Because she doesn't believe in aliens. And this is why skeptics are not rational. This is why I've said this. I've done entire talks on skeptics. When they say, well, our data's being misrepresented and misappropriated by Avi Loeb, isn't it awful? We don't know that the skeptics mean that. We don't know that they're being driven by purely rational motives here. And what Anton just said there is despicable. Shame on him. You know, Karen Meach, like I said, Karen Meach has written a book called Comets 3. But she's just selling books. No, she isn't, because she's a sensible scientist who doesn't believe in aliens. So therefore, she can publish all the books she wants and she can make a bloody fortune in royalties. Avi Loeb writes a book saying there are aliens, and suddenly, oh, he's just trying to sell books. He's a grifter. He's a circle jerker. And did you see the double standard here? Do you see I mean, let's face it. You know what the best-selling non-fiction book of the 21st century so far has been? At least in the area of like philosophy of science. Do you know what it is? It's The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. It's not a book by David Icke or Alex Jones or even me. It's a book by a atheo skeptico materialo extraordinaria pop scientist. But no one ever goes to him and says, Richard Dawkins, you're just selling books. No, because he says the right thing. Twat, you twat, Anton. You really are a twat. I see he makes some really good videos apart from that, but he does make some other pretty good videos, but that's a bad one. Okay, now this was the WOW signal emitted from 3i Atlas. And this is a popular idea that's been going around, because I won't read that because I can summarize it. Indeed, I've actually said this before. I think I mentioned it on the last video. The WOW signal, which Jerry Elner discovered in 1977, which just this huge burst of energy from Sagittarius, the same constellation where 3i was first spotted. People said, well, did it come from that? And Avi then explains how when the WOW signal actually emerged, he actually tells you exactly where 3i was, assuming 3i has always been on the same course. We don't know. It may have changed course. It may have even come out of a wormhole, like I said before. But anyway, on the 12th of August 1977, 3i Atlas was at a distance of 600 astronomical units from the sun. So it's a very long way out in space, approaching the solar system. And he gives the exact coordinates here. Right ascension, 19 hours, 40 minutes, 295 seconds, and declination 0.919 degrees. These parameters can be inferred accurately. And then he says the WOW signal was approximately 4 degrees in right ascension, 8 degrees in declination away from 3i Atlas. Now, depending on the range, depending on how far away, we don't know exactly what the range was on 3i Atlas. Sorry, we don't know what the range was on the WOW signal. So it could be coming from 1,000, from 600 astronomical units away, or it could be coming from 1,000,000 light years away. If it's coming from 1,000,000 light years away, you can triangulate it and realize that despite the fact that they appear very, very close together on the celestial sphere, they are actually, when you triangulate it, you'll realize that the two sources are completely different. They're literally millions. On the far side of the triangle is like millions of light years across. So there's no evidence that there's any connection between the WOW signal and 3i Atlas at all. So we're back to my notes. Okay, so what's coming up? Well, what's coming up is, you'll be pleased to know, there is the Mars approach. There was the Mars approach. The word conjunction is not correct. The word is often used is approach. But it says here, yes, according to a recent report by Earth Sky, the interstellar comet, this is Google. This is the fount of wisdom called Google AI. We don't know that it's a comet, but it's calling it that. Will make its closest point at 5 a.m. BST, October the 3rd. That's Friday. Now, there are 8 operational probes from 5 space agencies currently in orbit around Mars. So there's the Mars Odyssey, the longest-serving spacecraft at Mars, operating since 2001. The Mars Express from the European Space Agency, Europe's first planetary mission in orbit since 2003. Then the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. This is details images of the Martian service relay for the rovers. That's the most famous one. Then MAVEN, that's another NASA one, studies the Martian atmosphere. The Trace Gas Orbiter, that's a joint European and Russian mission, part of the ExoMars program, analyzing trace gases in the atmosphere. All right, that would be useful, actually, the Trace Gas Orbiter, because if something, I mean, obviously, like at 350,000 kilometers, the coma of 3I doesn't quite touch Mars, but it still could emit chemicals that could be picked up by the TGO. The HOPE Mars mission, this is the first interplanetary mission by the United Arab Emirates studying the Martian climate. And then another famous one, Tianwen-1, the orbiter, that's the Chinese Space Agency. It's the orbiter component of the Chinese mission, which also deployed the Zhurong rover. The Zhurong rover is a little bit like the Pathfinder rover on Mars, which is made by China. New additions, Escapade, twin orbiters from NASA. This pair of satellites launched in September 2025 and is designed to study the solar wind effects of Mars. They're known as Blue and Gold. Yeah, unfortunately they're not going to arrive in time. It'll take them quite a long. It'll take them, I think, a year or so to get to Mars. Right, now here's a bit of detail. Here's some details about the flyby missions, about what's going to happen. During the flyby of the comet, several space agencies plan to use Mars orbiting probe to make probes to make unique scientific observations that are not possible from Earth. The NASA probes, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. NASA plans to use the MRO's powerful HiRISE camera, and you've heard a lot about this, the HiRISE camera. This is the one that's often mentioned in 3I Atlasology, if that's a word. It's called the High Resolution Imaging Science Experiment. It has the range of 3I Atlas. Its pixel resolution is 40 kilometers. So that should give us an idea of how big the 3I Atlas nucleus is. So the HiRISE camera is the most important one. Then MAVEN, the Mars Atmosphere Volatile Evolution Orbiter, may also observe the comet. Its instruments are expected to provide insight into the coma. Escapade, the twin orbiters, these researchers, well, they're not going to get to Mars on time. Curiosity and Perseverance rovers, right? These are the ones on the ground, the vehicles with wheels which are on the surface of Mars. While on the Martian surface, these rovers may also be able to observe the comet at night, providing additional data points to track changes in its brightness and the size of the coma. The Mars Express from the ESA plans to use the high-resolution stereo camera, HRSC, on Mars Express to capture images of the comet. This could help reveal whether the comet is elongated, spherical, or regularly shaped. So again, we'll get a look at the nucleus. The TGO, the Trace Gas Orbiter, the Color and Stereo Surface Imaging System, CASIS, on TGO, will also be used to observe the comet. TGO's Nomad Spectrometer and Mars Express's Omega and SpyCam spectrometers will attempt to measure the chemical spectrum of the coma, though scientists have low expectations that the signal will be bright enough for definitive characterization. All right, so 3I Atlas is getting brighter, but the coma is not. All right, so then it's the nucleus getting brighter. Right, the HOPE probe from the UAE, the Emirates Mars mission could potentially use its Emirates Mars ultraviolet spectrometry, EMUS, spectrometer EMUS, to detect ultraviolet emissions from the comet's tail and coma. However, no official plan has been announced, as it would require off-pointing the instruments away from Mars. Yeah, obviously they have to rotate the object away from its view orbiter from China. Also carries a high-resolution camera that could be used to monitor the comet. Primary scientific goals: interstellar composition. By studying the light of the object, agencies hope to learn more about its chemical composition. Comet activity of perihelion. Since 3i Atlas will be on the far side of the Sun during its most active period, the Mars-based observations offer an opportunity to study the comet's outgassing and potential for outbursts and fragmentation. That's interesting. So it could be that during perihelion that we might get some data from Mars on this object. Some scientists think that this comet is star formation and could offer insights into the galaxy's early history. Yeah. So, even if it turns out, seriously, I'm open to the possibility this might be a natural object. I can't discount it, as Avi can't discount that it might be a natural object. But if it is, it's an extremely unusual one. And even if it's natural, and it's just like some lump from millions of years ago from the central galaxy, it offers scientists an opportunity to learn things about our universe that we wouldn't have otherwise known. So even if this is natural, it's still extraordinary. It's interesting. I'll be disappointed, obviously, but I won't be as disappointed as many of these scientists. Even if you turn the cameras from the Mars probes towards this object. Now, what if that doesn't happen? What if they say, "Oops, we had a little bit of a breakdown," or the operator called in sick, or a fuse went, or someone accidentally unplugged the machine in the mission control, right? Or these numerous other, dog ate my homework book excuses they will make not to look at 3i Atlas. Well, that's going to look suspicious when you consider the number of craft. As I said, there's 8 separate craft from 5 separate space agencies in different countries around the world. Surely it's going to be obvious deliberately. It's the stupidest excuse since Lord Nelson put the. Do you remember when Lord Nelson was it the siege of Copenhagen or something? His commander was ordering him to turn back from the attack. They say, "Admiral, they're signalling to you not to do this," and he put the telescope up to his blind eye, and he looked and he said, "I see no signal." It'll be like that. It would be as stupid as an excuse as that. It really will be. All right. So what's next? Let's have a look at this tweet. I found a very interesting tweet, which I think is a good summary of what's going on. We're nearly done now. I'm nearly through everything. And anything I miss and I forget about, or anything that news that appears between now and Friday, I'll discuss on the live stream, because there's going to be a live stream Friday. Okay, this is a very interesting tweet. I retweeted this because I thought this is a good summary. I think this is a very good summary here by UFO Mania, and as you can guess, I follow him. With a name like that, and the moment I saw his username, I thought, I've got to follow this guy. Anomaly stacking up, 3i Atlas assessment. This is interesting because there's the skeptical face, and then there's comet images here. 3i Atlas is not behaving as a natural comet. Observational data from multiple instruments presents anomalies that cannot be reconciled within standard cometary models. Attempts to explain the data with known physics lead to internal contradictions. The cumulative weight points towards an object of artificial origin, potentially engineered to appear comet-like. Anomalies. Non-gravitational acceleration. JWST measured heavy outgassing, yet orbital solutions remain purely gravitational with a deviation, as I said, of less than 15 meters per day, as we just read. And the source here, as you see, is Loeb 2025. Good old Avi, as always. He's going to be there. Negative polarization. Again, I've covered that, which I didn't quite understand, but it's not observed in any other comet or asteroid. CO2 HGO rate, that's CO2, carbon dioxide over water ratio near 8. Far outside solar system norms requiring exotic composition. Now, Cordiner. Now, Martin Cordiner, this guy Martin Cordiner, someone actually sent me a skeptic. I'll just say a little bit on Martin Cordiner because he was on. What was he on? He was on this. I'll just go to my history a moment. I don't want to show you everything in my YouTube history. He went to this. Somebody sent me a link to Martin Cordiner's interview saying, "There you are, Ben. You see, no, it's not." But I actually watched. I don't think this person actually watched the interview before it actually happened. And I'll just go. I'll use search in history. Here we are. Cordiner, because this is a NASA scientist. Here we go. 3i Atlas. This is Event Horizon. Okay.
In the UK, there are more than 3 million lost pensions. Let us help find yours.
Domino's ultimate. What it is, you don't need to watch it. I don't need to show it to you now. But it's called 3i Atlas Update, and it's all audio anyway. 3i Atlas Update. JWST reveals its composition with Martin Cordiner. Somebody sent this, and I actually put a comment on here. That was very interesting. Sure, I guess Martin Cordiner disagrees with Avi Loeb, but he's not closed-minded. Because somebody actually sent me this video. There's the some skipper posted a comment under one of my blog articles saying, "No, there you are, Ben." I'll show you the comment in a minute because I'm going to come to the article. It's not aliens. It's not aliens. It's a natural object. I'm going to rub it in. I'm going to gloat. The thing is, though, when I actually went and watched the interview with Martin Cordiner, the NASA scientist, to suggest this might be alien technology. But when for example, I remember one piece of dialogue when the presenter asked him to comment on the unusual trajectory, the coincidental timing and trajectory of 3i Atlas's, the fact that it's going close to all the planets except Earth, the fact it has this very low eccentricities, it's going through the solar system, it's virtually a straight line. He said, well, I mean, that could be just our luck, but on the other hand, it is unusual. He said, this is unusual, and it did make my ears prick. Strange coincidence. So he's not closed-minded. Martin Cordiner is not closed-minded about this at all. So that skipper didn't actually achieve what they wanted to. They sent me a source to explain why somebody is like gloating about how it's not aliens. It turns out, yeah, this guy is saying he doesn't think it's aliens, but he's still open-minded. Anyway, we carry on here. Water activity at 3.5 AU. OH detections imply large active surface inconsistent with nuclear size limits. Right, yeah. So again, this is how big it is. Dust activity at 6.5 AU. Outgassing began at distances too great for water ice sublimation. Yeah. So what chemical is causing this outgassing? If it's not water evaporation. Light curve slope break, brightening steep. Yeah, that is basically the that basically is the lighting anomalies which I discussed previously. That is the strange brightening and things like that. The green glow, strong carbon dioxide, classic comet green with. Oh, sorry, that's actually cyanide. Sorry, without classic comet green without expected molecules. Okay. Sun plume without thrust. Again, coma elongation towards the sun with no measurable push on the nucleus. So that's again Martin Cordiner. Which means basically, as I said, either the object is extremely massive or it has an internal propulsion system. In which case, if it has an internal propulsion system, then basically that's 10 on the Loeb scale. And so contradictions. Water has a small nucleus. Yeah, exactly. Water activity. I'll say that again. Water activity requires a large active surface. Brightness modeling requires a small nucleus. You can't. It's either one or the other. It can't be both. If you have a small nucleus, then it's not a comet, basically. If it's a large comet, then why is it so bright? It must be glowing. Polarization anomalies require exotic dust, while gas-dominated signatures conflict with that assumption. Outgassing rates should impart thrust. yet orbit remains purely gravitational. Conclusion: the evidence cannot be unified under exclusive requirements. The most consistent explanation is that 3I Atlas is artificial, designed to present comet-like emissions while concealing its true nature. There you go. What's interesting about that tweet is that he says it's designed to look like a comet. So is it possible that 3I Atlas is trying to disguise itself as a comet? And so it looks like a comet to we mere foolish humans on Earth are looking out into space, and we see something, and this could be the same reason that they've timed their pass through the solar system to avoid the Earth as much as possible. And honestly, if someone wanted to time this so it would avoid the Earth, as I said earlier, they couldn't have done a better job. We're on exactly the opposite side of the solar system. So they want to avoid observation from Earth. They want to create something that looks like a comet, so we mere humans will think we're just looking at a comet. In other words, it's stealthy, it's elusive. But the very fact they attempted to do that, I think, is very significant if that's the case. Right. Now, there's one more thing. There's Angry Astronaut. Now, Angry Astronaut, I've become a big fan of. He used to be a skeptic. He always has to go to the apology detectives and stuff like this. And he used to talk mostly about spaceflight, but now he's actually started talking about 3I a lot and UFOs. And he put this video up here.
With today's unpredictable...
Will the sun destroy 3I Atlas? A solar megastorm hits interstellar visitor. Right. I don't need to play you this, but it's interesting to watch because there's a whole lot of... Sorry, you didn't see that, did you? I'll just show it to you. Here we go. Stellar visitor. And it's true. A coronal mass ejection, this is a massive burst of solar radiation, has been emitted from the sun, and these things happen all the time. And when they strike comets, they often have unusual effects. So, for example, they may disperse the tail temporarily, only during the solar storm, because the massive particles of solar wind are so powerful they'll actually eliminate the tail. Now, it's interesting to see whether this happens to 3I Atlas. Now, occasionally, solar storms may initiate a fragmentation of the comet. That is, when the comet breaks into smaller comets. Now, comets often fragment. Usually, the sun grazers, the one that come very close to the sun, where they're heated to extreme levels, where the water basically disappears within the ice holding them together, completely disappears, so they just fall apart. Alternatively, sometimes the gravitational force, the tidal force from the sun, the fact that it comes so close that there's literally differing gravitational fields on the object, which then pull it apart. Now, 3I Atlas is actually not going to come that close to the sun. Where it is now, it's in terms of distance from the sun, it's actually slightly further away than it would be at perihelion. It'll happen. It'll be invisible to us. Now, again, the tidal forces at this distance won't be as big as the ones when they're close to the star they pass by. But it's very unlikely that what Angry talks about in this video is this could reveal something. I mean, it could be that it's very unlikely that if 3I Atlas is a natural object, then it's actually quite unlikely that it's going to break apart. Something of that size will break apart because of solar wind at that range from the sun. The way that 3I responds to this solar wind is it could actually reveal an awful lot about it. There's just one problem. The data necessary can't be gathered at the moment because when the solar wind only struck a couple of days ago. Again, as I said, the terrestrial telescopes can't really see very well what's going on with 3I. Also, as I explained earlier, the space-based telescopes are also useless. So basically, no one is watching 3I at the moment. No one. Except very basic observations being made just before dawn. Its position, velocity, etc. I put a comment on here. Actually, I put a little comment. I'll just show you the comment I put on this later. Observing 3i Atlas has become increasingly difficult as it approaches the solar conjunction. They are literally getting a few minutes before dawn. It's not enough to see if the tail or anti-tail have gone, or there is something else eating the CME, coronal mass ejection. In a few days, 3i will be in the blind spot for over a month. If only it happened 6 months earlier or 6 months later, we'd have a ringside seat. Yeah, and as I've said before, that could be deliberate. But so we can't actually see right now what effect. And the solar storm is now gone. It happened a few days ago, and it's gone. So we don't know exactly what effect that's going to have. We don't know. So that's something we're going to have to find out. But it could be that when the Mars probes observe it on Friday, there will still be some residue of the effect of the coronal mass ejection impact that will be visible on the object. So we'll find out. It could be this will reveal it is a natural object, or it could be the response, the reaction for the object to the solar wind could indeed add to the possibility that it is artificial and therefore bring it higher up on the lobe scale. So on Friday, we hopefully will know more. It depends. Well, also depends what they see, and as I said, they won't be able to get away with the excuse that things don't work. They have to get some kind of data from this object. 2 weeks to publish the JWST data. If they're a bit cagey and reluctant, it could be they've seen something they don't want us to know about. And unlike, despite what I said about astronomy being the one truly democratic science, right now, we are in the hands of these space agencies when it comes to information about 3i, because terrestrial telescopes are useless. Now, let's go. I think that's it for my notes. I've got one more thing here. What will happen during the solar conjunction? Now, Avi's already discussed this, and I've also talked about it. But 3i Atlas is going to hit perihelion. Now, it'll be out of sight, out of mind. Perhaps deliberately, as I've said before, perhaps deliberately, 3i is elusive and stealthy. So it's possible that it will do something significant which will reveal its true extraterrestrial technological nature while it's in the solar conjunction so that we can't see it. Avi speculates that it may exhibit what's called a reverse Oberth maneuver at that point, which means will we know? Will we be able to find out? Well, it's possible that it could be that the Mars probes will still be able to see something of it at that point. The question then goes, if they see anything, will it be revealing enough for us to work out what's going on? Will the image be clear enough? Because remember, these Mars probes for looking at things like this, they were trying to study a planet. And secondly, if they do see something, will they tell us? Or will the space agencies collaborate in keeping that information from us? It is possible that a cover-up could happen in this situation, considering the flow of information is much less, it's much lower, it's thinner, and it's more tightly controlled than what you normally get from astronomy, where everything can be seen from telescopes all over the world. They may decide to keep it from us. But they won't be able to keep the secret forever, because at some point terrestrial telescopes will be looking at the far side of the solar conjunction, waiting for 3i Atlas to reappear on the other side. An object that big, it can't evaporate. Now, some comets evaporate, like Elenin did. They evaporate and they don't survive their passage through the sun because they're not enough metals and rocks. Now, 3i is too big for that. It's too far away from the sun. It cannot evaporate. So if it doesn't turn up at the other side of the solar conjunction and all the telescopes are watching, it's going to appear any day now. Maybe tomorrow night we'll see it. Maybe tomorrow night. After a few nights of watching and realizing that there's nothing there, they're going to think, where's it gone? Where has 3i Atlas gone? Well, its home world. Or it has slowed down and entered solar orbit, and therefore its trajectory has changed into an orbital one, and therefore it's not going to be where the astronomers expected it to be. If that's the case, forget Juno, Forget Jupiter. So where will it go? If it's in solar orbit, where will it head? Where will it go? Well, if it may approach the Earth, it may erect a track which keeps it in solar conjunction so that we can't see it. In which case, the first we'll know about it is when it's probably quite close, maybe within the distance. But that's something that's going to we will have to wait and see, because that's just this. We're just talking possibilities now, and the rest I think we will cover in the live stream. What's going to happen is on Friday night I'll do a live stream about this. This is on Mars Day itself, the 5 a.m. It'll be a few hours past that. So hopefully, after like a few hours of processing data, it could be that some of it will be published. In which case, that'll be great, because that means we can actually talk about the data that's been published in the live stream, which would be fantastic. Because you can bet everyone's going to be banging on the doors, hammering on the tables and saying, let us in, let us in, let us see what you found. You've got to show us, you've got to show us. And I think these space agencies, they're going to have an awful lot of difficulty delaying publications, because everyone's going to be demanding them. So it's going to be far worse than the JW space agencies say, well, we're just editing the final drafts and then we'll submit it to Nature and to Science magazine, and then it's got to be peer reviewed, and then it's going to be published. So say, no, send us the bloody drafts. We want to see it. Send us the damn photos. Send us the readout now. So I wouldn't be surprised if on Friday evening, Friday evening UK time, British summer time, when I go live with my live stream that I'm going to do, I wouldn't be surprised if we have some information. Something has appeared in the news. There may even be a Google logo. There might be. Now, despite the fact that I'm such a woo-woo out there kind of person, I'm so pro Avi Loeb and against like all the various Skepper scientist tossers. All right, now not all of them are tossers. David Kipping, who's like this, is sort of like matinee idol kind of guy who does this Cool World YouTube channel. Right, he's the kind of Charlie Beach of the scientific world. He disagrees vehemently with Avi, but at least he's polite. He's at least polite. He's civil and polite to Avi. He really is. So he and Avi are kind of mates, and they work together. But generally speaking, like I'm definitely on Team Avi. I'm the woo-woo of the woo-woos when it comes. I'm a three-eye atlas alien believer. Do you know what I mean? So I'm one of those people. Now, this doesn't mean I believe everything. This does not mean I believe every damn thing people talk about. Now, there's an awful lot of male cow excrement out there connected to 3i Atlas. I'm just readjusting my notes 1 second. Forgive me, friends. I am normally more organized than this, or am I? But I often think like 3i Atlas, it's possibly, I believe UFOs are interstellar, but it's possibly the first time we've ever come across a scientifically inescapably obvious reason why, obvious reason to think this is a interstellar object. In other words, this is the first interstellar object that we have that has arrived in our solar system, which no one could deny exists, which is an interstellar object which is artificial. This is what, as I said before, this is why 3i is so important. This is why I'm focusing on it so much. If it does something truly alien, then they won't be able to cover it up. They cannot just put a bloody, well, as I said, apart from, well, it makes it more difficult. As I said, it could be that they will like control the narrative from the space agencies while it is in perihelion, as I said, behind the sun. However, where people can't see it. But at the same time, that will only be a temporary measure, because, as I said, it's only a matter of time before it appears out the other side of it appears out the other side of the sun, and the astronomers, every telescope will be waiting. When's it going to appear? When's it coming out again? and it won't be there. And they'll say, well, where the hell is it? You can't cover that up. But despite this, I get an awful lot of rubbish. And I'm not going to link to any of this stuff. But there's a load of social media posts with ridiculous titles that say things like, 3i Atlas is changing course to strike the Earth. And another one is, a comet is heading to attack 3i Atlas. And NASA is covering up signals from 3i Atlas. Right now, these posts, they tend to be technically sophisticated. They have like AI animated videos, really good AI voices that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing. They're very persuasive and they're very, very cool to look at, but they're total crap. I mean, when you consider the 3i Atlas it's so extraordinary, so exciting. Isn't that enough without making up bullshit about it? It's so unhelpful to promote this bollocks where everyone can see it. And that's really, really, so I get very upset when I see these things. I always put comments on there. And not only that, it could frighten sensitive people. There's some people who will see this and it will literally give them nightmares. If I was a little kid, and I know I was a very frightened, I was an unhappy child. I really was. I was a frightened, disturbed child. And if I saw something like this, it would give me nightmares. It would really terrify me. But I mean, I do want it to do something truly alien, because of course, that, as I said, that would be a catastrophic disclosure moment. But at the same time, you know, it's got to be real and not fake. And I wrote an article. I can show you the article I wrote about it. Yeah, this is it. I'll just show you this article. It's called 3i Atlas Bull, and it was here that someone left an interview for Martin Cordner. Great interview from Martin Cordner of the JWST here. Composition of the 3i Atlas comet. The same channel interviewed Avi Loeb last week, if you're interested. It's old and we know where it's from, even older than the solar system, which sort of discounts it being an alien visitor coming to say hello to us specifically or even unintendedly. And I said, thanks for the link. I like to hear all sides of the story. And as I said here, I've watched it and it's actually pretty good. Despite what you said, it does not really discount 3i being an alien visitor. Martin Cordner sounds quite open-minded, more so than I expected. He's really just guessing, even more so than Avi. Obviously, he's not likely to join Avi in his quest, but he does not scoff at the trajectory evidence, etc. So, yeah, I was actually very, very pleased by that. So, please, if you see any of these videos, please ignore them. If you see any of these ridiculous, sensational, crappy clickbait videos, 3i Atlas is going to kill us all, and all this stuff, it's not true, all right? There's no evidence to suggest that 3i Atlas is going to do us any harm. We've been visited by interstellar beings all the time and have been for thousands of years. Sure, there's dangers, you know, abductions, mutilations, but that doesn't keep you awake at night, does it? If this doesn't keep you awake, what difference will 3i Atlas make? It's just one more object. It's just one extra UFO. Please don't worry. Relax. I swear to you, there's nothing to be scared of here. Absolutely nothing to be scared of at all. So I do hope you'll tune into that. I do hope as many people as possible join the live chat. We can have a good old discussion with you. I mean, live streams are useless if no one turns up. I mean, I want you to be there to discuss these things with me. So please do come along Friday evening, 9 p.m. I'll put up the usual live stream notice beforehand. All right, it's just to remind you guys. But we'll find out more then. Hopefully, we'll know more then. And if depending on what happens, I might make another video or live stream after that, even maybe over the weekend or after or next week. In the meantime, always. Well, this is exciting times, isn't it? Very exciting times. Honestly, man, this is thrilling. I've never been so wound up over anything before. Thank you, all of you, for watching Panwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.